get absorbed in, and you are Sonic.
What's up, everybody? I'm Taylor Olmstead, and I want to welcome you back to No Repeat, a podcast where we pick 3 songs every week with no repeats and no do-overs to create a perfect playlist for every occasion life throws at you. Joining me are my co-hosts Tyler Reed.
I'm 13 years old.
And Sean Evans.
Yeah.
Tyler, what was our challenge this week?
Hey, cool babies. This week, we had an old challenge-arito, didn't we? We had a challenge for sure. This week, you're trying to find the perfect song off the first album that we ever bought. Thanks, Michael Kostick. If you want to submit your challenges to No Repeat, you can send us a DM on No Repeat Pod on Instagram and Twitter, or you can always email us at norepeatpod@gmail.com. Thanks so much.
So we understand that Sean had a bit of a mix-up here.
I didn't have a mix-up. I really like this song.
He really likes this song.
I think you did pick a really good song.
I think we all picked a really good song. I'm glad that Tyler changed, because that was arguably the worst song, but...
Whoa!
Right?
Yeah, Tyler changed last minute, and I think he made the right choice.
Yeah, there's like no reason for this... Yeah, I'm glad that you changed. I mean, I just blankly approved it. I didn't really honestly, like, look and see what you submitted. I would have been like, oh yeah. Like, Kool-Aid Man busts through the wall, oh yeah. Because of that.
Goodness.
Like...
It's important to point these things out when they happen. But I'm curious, what do you guys remember about your first album purchases? Because I distinctly remember mine.
I went to Best Buy.
And?
Remember whenever you could go to Best Buy to get CDs? Isn't that amazing? When you saw music videos on TV and you said, wow, I want to buy that album. And most of the time, you made a terrible decision. I had also received as a gift All the Right Reasons by Nickelback. Listen.
Me too. For Christmas, actually.
We all at one point said, is Nickelback a good band? And we said, maybe.
It's okay. I went even deeper into the depths and checked out a 3 Days Grace CD from the library.
You know, it's
Could you
always...
be mean? Could you be angry?
Yes, I could. There was a very weird summer where I was making my money by mowing lawns and listening to 3 Days Grace and Blue October all the time.
I don't love that. That sounds terrible. That sounds like the worst possible.
It was a dark time, guys. It was a dark time.
So what I'm thinking is that, like, you are making the active decision to buy an album. Like, you're a baby, you have some money, you have very limited control, and you have no concept of anything, right? The world is vast and infinite, and you've explored, like, barely a percentage of it. And so, like, I feel like if you were able to think about that as a child, and you're like, this is the first album I'm ever buying, the horror you would have over being like, this has to be the perfect one, this has to be the exact one that will be memorable for the rest of my life, I feel like would be too incredible to bear. So I'm glad that the human ability to forget is instilled in all of us.
That being said, I'm actually really proud of my first album purchase. I distinctly remember seeing music videos for a couple of the songs on it and feeling like that was a good omen for buying the record. And my mom took us to Walmart and I bought the CD off of the little end cap CD rack. Like, it was brand new. It had just come out that week. So it was like on the end cap, and I bought it and I made her put it on in the car on the way home. And then
you immediately regretted it.
Exactly. Not because the music was bad, but because the album was full of swears. And I got in trouble. And my parents took my first CD away, looked through the lyric book, and then told me which songs I was not allowed to listen to. And that I had to skip all of the songs with swears in them.
We say let you keep the CD.
And they did. They eventually did take away a CD from me. They confiscated my copy of the first Tenacious D album.
That's probably the right choice.
Because that was just irredeemable. But this one they let me keep. I just had to skip tracks 6, 8, 11... and 14.
Hey, that's not that bad.
Not really in the grand scheme of things.
See, back in the day, Taylor's mom and dad would have had like a caliper or something, and they would have measured the takeaway off the vinyl from where the needle had hit to know whether or not he actually did it. Now, the problem with the CD is, the vinyl's not as deep. So, at a microscope kind of deal, right? Because the laser only eats away so much. It doesn't actually, the fidelity continues to be clear. It's quite unfortunate. That's honestly what made records that much better, right? Is that like just over time, the wearing away of the Stanley Steamer pressed needle that you put, your dog on top of to make it go around.
I don't think Sean actually knows how record players work, but yes, it was apparently too much for my impressionable 12-year-old mind.
I wasn't gonna say anything. I was just gonna let him play in the space, but okay.
But Sean, what was your first CD purchase like? Or I guess album. We don't know if you bought it on CD. Maybe you got a cassette. I don't know.
No, I did. No, I got it. It was a CD. Man, I forget what happened. Like, my parents went out of town, and
Okay, that's a weird start.
well, they gave us like an allowance.
And you had a bunch of fireworks. And oh wait, no, that was a different weekend.
No, that was later. That was a different weekend. But they went out of town, and they gave my brother and I like some money or something. I feel like we like stayed with our grandparents or something. Something happened. And I wasn't driving at the time, and I convinced my grandparents to like take me to Best Buy. I was like, oh, I have to get this CD. I got some extra money, and they're like, okay, whatever, we'll go out. I think we went to like Bob Evans
Hell yeah, dude.
for dinner because my grandparents really loved Bob Evans. Like they were first name basis with most of the waiters and waitresses in Bob Evans. So maybe we went there for dinner, and then I was like, oh, I need to go over here and get a CD real quick. I have some money in there. Like, okay, it's fine. So I went in there, and I don't remember. Maybe it was the music video for the second single of this. Yeah, for the second single of this on this album that I was like really into at the time. And I basically I had like that opalescent blue Walkman.
I distinctly remember that, yes.
You guys probably don't even remember me having this thing because I had an MP3 player. But like everybody had something along those lines. Like if you didn't have a Walkman, you were terrible. And like I think this CD never left. I think I learned how to play every single song on this CD on drums. Like I just played this thing for like, I don't know, probably like months, and nothing ever left. Like I was just so in love with this album. And I'll talk a little more about it later when we get to my actual pick. But that's if I recall, that's about how it went down. But that was it. I was like so excited, and this was like back in the day in Best Buy, when you had to go in there and they had the CDs inside of the little cases, so you could like carry them around like a purse. Like they had the big handle on the bottom, so they would like rise above.
Yes, the big plastic like clamshell thing.
Yeah,
and you had to get somebody at the counter to open it up for you.
Right, that was the only way to do it, and it was like you might have had like you could walk over to the little station that had like the grimy headphones on it, and you could put them on and listen to like 30 seconds of a couple of tracks on the album to see if you actually liked it enough to like want to buy it. I didn't do that. I just walked right up, found it, said this is it, bought it. It's probably all of like $14.99.
That sounds pretty pricey.
Oh, absolutely. I'm sure it was, because CDs were expensive back then.
Yeah.
Were they?
I have no doubt that I paid at least $12 for mine. I mean, this was the...
Yeah.
I feel like it was cheaper.
This was the, like, pre-iTunes world. We were still living in kind of a scarcity economy in terms of music purchasing. Like, it was a big deal to have a CD collection of any reasonable size,
Oh, yeah, you had to go to... Right. If you, like... And you remember... Tyler definitely remembers this, because I feel like a bunch of us had them. But those, like, CD binders, the Trapper Keepers for CDs...
Oh, Tyler had the biggest one I ever saw.
Tyler had, like, the Dawson's Creek version of it from South Park that you just kept flipping. And, like, sometimes I would, like, go to his house and flip through it, and there was just stuff in there that I'd, like, never... Like, I thought to myself, I swear I've been through this thing, like, 5 or 6 times, and there is new stuff in here now that was not here before.
My parents were real enablers. It makes a lot of sense.
Truly, like, our taste in music would not be the same if Tyler's parents had not just bought him whatever CDs he wanted as a young teenager, because it would be like, oh, I heard of this band, and Tyler would be like, oh yeah, I have their CD, I think I've listened to it like twice, and it's just like in his binders upon binders of CDs. It was impressive.
I don't even...
The rest of us were just checking CDs out from the library and burning them, even though we weren't technically supposed to.
I'm like thinking about it. I'm like, I don't even know how I got the money for a lot of these ththings. My mom was very kind. That one of her greatest gifts to me is that she would slap me a 20 pretty much every time I went out with you guys. So that was really a great gift. But I feel like the position my parents had is like, well, he's not spending it on drugs, so I guess that's okay. So
yeah, I feel like mine had it in the same. There was like a lot of the same thing. Like when my mom and dad would be like, "Oh yeah, where you going?" I'd be like, "Oh, I'm going over to Tyler's." It was always okay.
yeah.
There was never like a time where they're like, "No, that's no." Or like, "I'm going over to Greg's. I'm going over to Taylor's. I'm going over to Tony's." There was never like a time where they were like, "No, don't get pregnant," you know? Like they kind of just. It was always cool to go over to your guys' house.
Because they knew we were just going to sit in each other's basements and, like, burn CDs and copy MP3s to thumb drives and talk about how much we hated Guns N' Roses because we were teenagers and that was our dad's music.
Well, that being said, I did have a surplus of classic rock from my father who gifted me...
He did, yeah.
Many CDs over the years. And I feel like in some ways that really, like, instilled a lot of, like, my... like early like interest in like collecting music. But I feel like
oh totally, I did the same thing because my dad was a DJ in college, and shortly after he graduated from OU he migrated his whole vinyl library to CD, which I still kind of judge him for now that vinyl's come back around. But it did mean that, like, at 10 or 11 years old, I had his copies of The Wall and The White Album and The Best of the Doors and, like, things that a 10 or 11-year-old probably wasn't ready for. But I was, like, the cool kid at middle school who, like, could get you a copy of The Wall, you know? but my like... my understanding of rock music at that time was limited to like what my dad had from the late 70s and early 80s and then whatever I could scrounge at the public library. And so it was really exciting buying my first CD and having it be like something that had just come out, because it was like, oh, this is my collection now. Like,
yeah,
these are my CDs, you know?
We should explore this on Billy Joe Armstrong's Middle School Notebook about like when our parents' music taste kind of stopped, if they did.
Ooh, I like this.
There's a bunch of like interesting theories about this that we'll explore on the Patreon.
Yes. So if you want to get our...
Because I'm curious. I like having conversations like that.
If you want to get our exclusive Patreon monthly after show, Billy Joe Armstrong's Middle School Notebook, you can pledge to support No Repeat for as little as $1 a month, and you'll get access to that. There will be a link down in the show notes where you can learn all about the Patreon. But for now, we should get into some picks. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first. Because mine's kind of sad, so we'll just knock it out of the way.
Get it, dude. What you got?
All right, so this week for my perfect song off of my first album that I bought, it's Absolution off of Muse's... Or sorry, Sing for Absolution off of Muse's album, Absolution. It's a lot of absolution.
Bad company's bad company off the album Bad Company. That's right. Everyone's favorite song, band, and album.
I think.
See also Badfinger by Badfinger on the album Badfinger.
Badfinger. So like I kind of said, like I feel like when I first heard of Muse, which maybe this is why I have like a special place for Genghis Khan too, because Time Is Running Out has a very like similar dancey scene in like the super, you know, United Europe war room thing. And I was just like so in love with it. It stuck in my head. I wanted this album so bad. I listened to that song over and over. But there was like a really interesting turning point for Muse, right? Like you're going through this album and you're like, you get intro, right? Then you have Apocalypse Please, which is like up-tempo rock and Time Is Running Out. And then all of a sudden track 4 is like Sing for Absolution, which is this like really down-tempo, like just ballad where, oh man, I forget the lead singer's name now.
Matt Bellamy.
Matt Bellamy is just like showing off his range. And it's like it's a little bit of like a song that you're like, okay, so we can just talk about that because this is like a great segue into that. So the reason that I really like this song is because I think when I listened to this album for so long, I basically like transitioned a couple years with this album. And I remember my first year at band camp, I was like infatuated with this girl at band camp. I just thought she was like so beautiful. And like I could never talk to her. And like when I know you guys are dying laughing right now, but like this was one of the songs that I just couldn't, like I couldn't stop thinking about her. And I was just listening to the song over and over. And I was like,
I only dream of you, my beautiful.
Right. No, that's exactly right. Like you kind of like, it's so soft and like, but it still has this like intensity. I mean, the piano is awesome, and then they go right into the chorus is this like fuzzed out guitar song like sound with lots of reverb. The drums are like toms and crash cymbals. It's very subdued, and then he goes into the bridge, which is just insane. Like the first time that I listened to this, I just could not believe. I'm coming up to it right now, like in the song as I'm listening to it, and I was just like. It's not a very like technically proficient solo, but it just does such a good job of like capturing that like intensity. It's just, man, I'm sorry, I just love the hell out of this song. Which is funny because I don't really listen to this album that much. Like maybe like I think I've listened to this one maybe like once in the past 5 years, maybe. If there's any album that I return to and I couldn't pick it for this. Oh, B-sides. I'll B-side it. Okay, stop right there.
Well, Sean, maybe you didn't maybe you haven't thought about Muse in a long time because, they released Black Holes and Revelations, and that was just, their magnum opus, and they just stopped making albums after that. You said, well, that's enough.
That's correct, Tyler. Thank you.
That's right. Nothing else happened after that, and they just sort of faded into obscurity.
So here's the thing, right? We got to deal with the elephant in the room, which is that everything Muse released after Black Holes and Revelations might as well not exist because it's not very good. Except for
I disagree.
It may be like half of the Second Law, like half of it.
Like I'm just saying, these are like perfect albums. Like.
Yes, I would argue that Origin of Symmetry, Absolution, and Black Holes and Revelations are wall-to-wall perfect albums. And I am a little bit younger than Sean and Tyler are, so I was in middle school when Absolution came out, but I was in early high school when Black Holes and Revelations came out, and I remember being really into Knights of Sidonia, which was, of course, the lead single off of that record. And then our mutual friend, Katie Keefe, was like, listen, this ain't nothing. And she burned me a copy of Absolution, and it just like blew my little mind. Because as somebody who, as I alluded to earlier, grew up on like Pink Floyd and The Doors, and I had like just gotten out of a really heavy Moby phase, like lots of trance and ambient, which I alluded to last episode. And Muse was such a great marriage of like that EDM style of like building in crescendos with the powerful guitars of like a late period Pink Floyd, like a David Gilmour guitar solo. And it clicked for me. Like I like Black Holes and Revelations, but I love Absolution. It's the only Muse record I have on vinyl. I think this song as the centerpiece of the record is really the like mission statement of what they're trying to do on this album, which is to tell this like big, sweeping theatrical story. I don't know if this is a concept album, but it always kind of read like one to me. Like it has this kind of dystopian narrative that it's trying to tell. And I adore it so much. I saw Muse on the Second Law tour, which was, the newer songs they played were fine, but just seeing the three of them on stage making that much noise and like a giant light show, and they played this song and a few others from this album, and to just see the whole crowd like go wild for a mid-tempo ballad like Sing for Absolution, it's like these are my people, like these are my nerds, and I'm here with them. So I'm really glad that you picked this. The song is awesome.
I'm like falling in love with this song as I'm like listening to it more, because you're right. This song does a lot. It's pretty powerful. I think what really does a disservice, though, is that I feel like just some songs you just don't get the full experience if you're not like headphones ain't gonna cut it. Like I got like these are like decent like Sennheiser like headphones, like they're fine, they're old, but like a vinyl version of this, a live version of this, just like a nice like stereo setup, like that's gonna be like crushing. And I've only. Yeah.
Because the build, when it's playing loud on speakers, the build for that bridge, like Sean was saying, it's just exquisite. But in headphones, you're right, it doesn't really do it justice.
Because you don't really understand, like, it sounds so stupid to be like, to make the argument for vinyl, right? Like, it sounds so, like, hip or whatever, but it really just, you just can sense it. Like, I felt it before, like, listening to, like, either a vinyl or, like, just through good speakers. It's an otherworldly experience to, like, to actually hear, like, it comparable to what it should actually sound like. My whole life, I've just been listening to things like crushed through MP3 players, crappy headphones, like I've never like really bought like anything really high quality. But like just the exact moment I actually heard something that sounded good, I was like, oh, this makes sense. So that being said, I think as we said, Muse in general, immaculate. I think they have great themes. You could just sense they just have like such a flavor. Like you cannot mistake this as any other band. You're like, that is Muse. Like, it's iconic, and you said there's only 3 people in this band.
Yeah.
Like, what?
No. Listen to this. Okay, so
guitar, bass, drums, right?
The basis
yes,
for Muse.
Okay.
The basis for Muse, well, the agreement that he had to join Muse was that he would take bass lessons. He was a drummer. He didn't even play bass. Listen to a bass line on a Muse track from on Absolution. I promise you will say, there is no way that this dude wasn't slapping out of the womb.
Like, to be fair, I hadn't really picked up specifically on the bass, but that's a really interesting point. But no, that's a pretty tight group. 3 people and that kind of sound, vocally, there's a lot going on. Like, he's not phoning that in.
That is truly, I think, the energy of this band is Matt Bellamy, because he does the lead guitar and the keys and the vocals, but just seeing him live, he is a force of nature. He does this bit.
Yes.
He does this bit with like. He has guitars that are modified in all sorts of weird ways. Like, he has what's called a K-oscillator. It's an effects touchscreen that he had custom built into a guitar so that he could reach it while he's playing. It's like 6 inches from the strings because he didn't want to have to walk back to his amp. When they do Plug-in Baby, which is from the album before this, live, he uses a Leslie revolving speaker that he's had covered in mirrors, and throughout the song he walks over and grabs it and starts spinning it because the spinning of the amp changes the tone.
Yes.
And he's like spinning the amp to get different tones throughout the playing of the song. Like, the man is just incredible.
And that's really what I'm saying, is I'm glad that he finally ended with their magnum opus and we all just sort of let them live their lives. And that's the part that hurts the most. Like, and that's fine. People change their style, they change their mood. Maybe he was just really tired of being like, this is a lot of work. I need something a little easier. I don't know, but no, this has definitely been listening to it today and listening to it a few times. I would say I definitely like the hype tracks for like the other singles from this album. because I think they're also iconic in this. But this I think you're all really making a really good case for the song too. I'm really into.
But I have never, to this day, I'm starting it today. When people ask me who a really good guitarist is, I'm gonna start saying Matt Bellamy, because I feel like I never hear people say that, and they are dead wrong about that. Like, why does he not get more credit for being a fantastic guitarist?
I do not know.
Because he's already a great vocalist.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the sexy part, but I mean, the man can friggle the Fraggles and belt.
I mean, but it's kind of like kind of like one of those, I feel like it's a guitar style that's really just more about like the style, the character. No, we're good. I'm fine.
You get, no.
It's a Tom Morello thing,
No, you're totally right. And I think, speaking of style and character, I would like to go next, if that's okay.
That's fair. To me, let me just say, lots of style and character in this episode.
Yes.
Like,
Yes, correct.
We should apologize to everybody who's listening to this too, because probably the next two songs you're gonna have one stuck in your head the whole way through it, and then the next one right after that, you're also gonna have that one stuck in your head. So just
be ready.
I don't know, pause for a little bit. Right.
Well, here comes your next earworm. It's my pick this week, Float On by Modest Mouse. I used to joke with people that you could always tell that I was going to be a hipster because the first CD I ever bought with my own money was Good News for People Who Love Bad News by Modest Mouse. I love this record to the ends of the earth. Another band that has a varied catalog, some of it better than others, but the thing that I've always loved about Modest Mouse and that you get on this song, and I think I knew as a young child hearing this song, is that nobody else is doing what Modest Mouse is doing. And in particular, nobody else is doing what Isaac Brock is doing. Isaac Brock, the frontman of Modest Mouse, is one of the weirdest, most idiosyncratic figures in 2000s rock. He was known for being incredibly aggressive, drunk all the time. He would storm off stage all the time. I read a really great biography of the band that I'll put in show notes, where they talk about how he has a lisp and he's very self-conscious about it. And so for most of their time as Modest Mouse, he has double-tracked all of his vocals to try and hide his lisp, which is part of where you get that weird vocal sound that he has, because you're always hearing at least two of him. And the thing that I think is so interesting about him is, for all of his weird, tortured artist sensibilities and, vague grunge upbringing and alcoholism and everything, he can write a really compelling pop song when he wants to.
Yeah.
And this song is such an example of that. This song is dark and witty, but inherently poppy and catchy. That chorus of "We'll all float on okay" just gets stuck in your head immediately. But when you listen to the lyrics, or when you read the lyrics to this song, it's hilarious. He's so funny. The opening stanza of the song is, "I backed my car into a cop car the other day. Well, he just drove off. Sometimes life's okay. I ran my mouth off a bit too much. What did I say? Well, you just laughed it off and it was all okay." And then the second verse, "A fake Jamaican took every last dime with that scam, but it was worth it just to learn some sleight of hand." What? Who thinks of this stuff? He's so smart and he's so funny. And I adore this record. It's super weird. It's really dark. As I mentioned, some of the songs on this are really obscene, and my parents took big issue with that. It's very anti-religion, which was definitely a turnoff for my parents, but it was such a formative record for me because it showed me that you could be nerdy and dark and still be cool and still have fun. This album is still a party, even though it's kind of all about death and sadness. And I just really dig that.
And
where do you even start? No, go ahead.
All right. This song was on the radio forever. I still feel like if you talk to somebody who's like Generation X or millennial, they probably remember this song as like being kind of a phenomenon. And like I feel like this album was pretty well reviewed too. Like a lot of people were like, "Oh yeah, no, I own that. That's great."
It was. It's definitely their best-selling record. I mean, the reason I bought it was because Float On, and then the second single was Ocean Breeze Salty, which is also impeccable.
It just, this is where most of like millennial hipsters start. Honestly, this is like the genesis point. No, I'm just kidding. I have no evidence to prove that.
No, it is.
I'm going to put it on Unsolved Mysteries on Netflix. Where did millennial hipsters start? But
you can't have this is Holland 1945 without Float On.
I need to fact check that. You're incorrect. In the Aeroplane Over the Sea came out in 98. This came out in 2004.
What I'm saying is there's no kid in our generation that somehow heard Neutral Milk Hotel first. Is
Correct.
What I'm saying. Yes, I just want to be clear that it was my intent. Is they listened to Modest Mouse and they're like, this band is even crunchier and crappier than this band. I could have listened to them too.
We should also mention that this year, the year that this record came out, is, in my opinion, the most formative year for rock and roll in our lifetime.
Probably.
In 2004, you had this record, Good News for People Who Love Bad News, My Chemical Romance's 3 Cheers for Sweet Revenge, Green Day's American Idiot, and Fall Out Boy's From Under the Cork Tree, all in the same year.
Yeah, that's pretty close.
Oh, and The Killer's Hot Fuss.
Yeah.
Just for good measure.
Just boom. Like, this whole year just unloaded. Well, when did, like, I feel like, Oh,
and wait. I think there's another one. Hold one moment, please. Oh, no. Okay, so the next year, Death Cab for Cutie's Plans was 2005. Huge year for rock and roll, especially indie rock.
No, but I feel like there was other, like, more emo bands that kind of had the same, yeah, man, like, Sing the Sorrow came out around this time, like, The Used came out around this time, and had, like, there was a bunch of, like, popular emo groups that came out about this time, too.
And this record is so not that.
I think Hawthorne came out. Right, that's what I mean, like, it...
Which I think is what made it stand out.
Right, there wasn't a lot of radio play for that. Well, I don't know. The Used and AFI always got radio play. I mean, you could still today.
My Chemical Romance and the Killers and Fall Out Boy were all getting tons of play at the same time that this song was on the radio.
This is like the last hurrah of rock and roll on popular radio, probably.
I bought this album and I immediately started it and I was like, "This is weird," and I turned it off. And that is so indicative, as we have already discussed, of my listening habits, where I'm like, I like this song. Where are all these trumpets? What is happening? I'm a little afraid. and I turned it off. But I remember watching this on VH1 with so many other like music videos at the time, and I was so enamored by this, probably for just like all the same reasons we already discussed. I think this is also an album that I specifically gave, like, one of the most handed out albums I think I ever, like, it's definitely in the tops. I think one of my oldest, like, I think some of my oldest friends, I actually turned them onto this band, and I became, like, one of their favorite artists because of that. So, it's very funny that this is an album that I slept on for so long, but it's so good. You're right. It is good front to back, and this is also a perfect song in every way. I just can't. Top song.
I don't know where Modest Mouse is right now, or if Isaac Brock is okay, but I sure hope so. They haven't put out a record in a while, and I miss them.
Doing some self-care.
Speaking of, Tyler, what was your pick this week?
This week I chose Feel Good Inc. by Gorillaz.
My chocolate attack. Shit, I'm stepping in harder this year. Yeah, been rapping in harder this year.
So this is the third time the Gorillaz have been on the playlist, so nothing new to anybody. But this was really the song that really got me into them. I feel like it was definitely on VH1, but I also have some weird recollection of it being on like Yahoo Music or something. Like I saw the music video, and I think we all have to accept that a big draw of the Gorillaz is the music videos. You know, along with, you know, Daft Punk's Interstellar. I forget what the name is called, but they're basically their anime music video. And that was like really compelling to me as a kid growing up. You know, I think they also had like a block where they did some of their older songs on Toonami. You know, I feel like Toonami also instrumental to sort of bringing interesting, cool new music, you know, to people. And I think it's really telling that one of the first CDs that I ever bought was a sort of like illustrated band. You know, like I feel like it makes a lot of sense. I think a lot of times we kind of end up going towards like gimmicky kind of bands, you know, like Tenacious D, or I don't know, I can't think of anything else off the top of my head, but there's definitely like bands that are like kind of goofy. But there was just something about this song that just really struck me. Obviously, in addition to being a really cool music video. I mean, it's just I feel like all these songs are perfect. These are all perfect songs. So like, what else can you really say? I mean, but this song really, like, almost from the beginning just gets you. That bass line, you know, the sort of like ethereal sort of like whisper words. You're like, what's happening? And then like, there's something about like the very melancholy vocals of 2D that really just sort of like bring you in with it's sort of like this real juxtaposition of like a banging bass beat, you know, like great drums. And it just sort of like has a strange, like intoxicating mix that feels like it shouldn't work, but it works so perfectly. The rest of this album, I think, is good, but it was definitely weird for me listening to as a kid. I definitely feel like there's a lot of like sort of like mood pieces, almost like soundscapes for a lot of them. They definitely weren't as like traditionally structured compared to Feel Good Inc. So I feel like it wasn't an album that I was like dying to listen to, but this is definitely, you know, obviously a hit, and I think I ended up getting like some of their older albums too. But yeah, absolutely love this song. Great, perfect. Played in every gymnasium, stadium, football game, baseball game, literally any opportunity. I feel like it was played in everything and everywhere for up until this day. It's still probably played. So
I feel like I talk about this every time we have to talk about Gorillaz on the show. I say have to as if it's a bad thing. But when we were kids, Gorillaz was the cool cartoon characters on MTV and VH1, and especially with this video. This video was so cool and innovative, and it had the mix of traditional and 3D animation and film clips. Like, there's just so much going on in it, and you get a sense of who all the characters are. But as I got older and started to learn who Gorillaz is as people, it all kind of clicked into place to me, similar with the Modest Mouse thing of like why I like this. So again, for those who may not be familiar, Gorillaz is really the brainchild of Damon Albarn, the former frontman of Blur, who got tired of doing alt-rock and wanted to do hip-hop and electropop. And so he created this project with his illustrator friend Jamie Hewlett. This is from the second Gorillaz album, Demon Days, which I agree with Tyler, while very weird, is kind of a perfect album. And I think the real reason for that is that it's produced by Danger Mouse, aka Brian Burton, who is half of Gnarls Barkley. And Danger Mouse's sensibility on this record is just incredible. He's bringing in this weird, twisted nostalgia that he does on everything. Like, listen to his album that he did with Beck. Like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. Like that 60s psychedelia reboot. And you get that sense here with like the twangy guitars on this track and the like weird melodic passages. But I think the thing that really ties this song together and makes it powerful is the De La Soul feature. So American rap group De La Soul are featured in the verses and the bridge of this track, and it really just takes Gorillaz to another level. I feel like Damon has always picked really great people to collaborate with on a track-by-track basis, but there's something about the vocals that David Jude Jolicoeur, aka Trugoy the Dove from De La Soul, like his raspy, dark rapping vocal contrasts so well with the melodic singing that Damon Albarn brings to the table that I feel like it just makes this song such a weird juxtaposition that works so well. And it's such like strange experimental pop music that it's really odd that it became like a number 14 single and was like massively popular, because this song is so odd. And then the follow-up single Dare was even weirder, and it's just like, I cannot believe that this band was as popular as they were, but I'm so glad that they were, because they're awesome.
No. See, I think that there was actually a lot of like bands that set up the Gorillaz for success. Like when you listen to like old Red Hot Chili Peppers, when you listen to Rage Against the Machine, when you listen to like early 90s hip hops that was sampling rock and roll already, if you're looking at the inverse side of the coin, are you looking at the inverse? Like, I think there was an audience that was primed for the Gorillaz, and the Gorillaz took it to like a new artsy animated place that integrated like some undertones of like animation and like grunginess that might have been missing from, like, I don't know, like early Peppers was very like almost hippie-esque, but not Gorillaz. That was like London street, kind of like it had a little bit more, it was a little bit more polished, but it was a little more grimy, That's why I think that the Gorillaz are just a success in general, because they bridge so much stuff. Like they found the right formula to capitalize on, like, not only did you know how to make like a killer beat and add like rock and drums and everything, but then you add the hip hop element and lyrics, and it adds like a new level. So you're kind of able to capitalize on so much, which Feel Good Inc. is a really good like example of this. I also think, Clint Eastwood capitalizes that. It is like that is the song that kind of is, when I think about Gorillaz, Feel Good Inc. comes to mind because that is the song of the time, right? But like, you can remember growing up as a kid, like Clint Eastwood was on the radio. Feel Good Inc. was on the radio, but Clint Eastwood was on the radio. Like,
I remember the exact moment in a Journey's shoes when I first saw the video for Clint Eastwood and was like, what on earth is happening?
Like, whatever it is,
what a moment.
I'm into it. That's what I want to. There's something so special about like seeing those things. Like, you like watch something on like TV, like you just barely catch like the end of something. You're like, wait, I can never reclaim this information. It's never gonna come back to me. And that's sort of like, I'm almost nostalgic for like hearing or seeing things and not being able to find them. Because now I can just Shazam anything I want.
Right.
But I think it also should just be said, good job, Gorillaz, for just finding for like uplifting black voices and rappers, and that that's good for getting their bases together, but also getting people like me, regular old white people, to check out some rap music. So I think it's also pretty neat.
Yeah. Also, a lot of the new sorry, you can cut this out if you want. I like that a lot of the new Gorillaz stuff is like they always seem to be down for doing like the cool animation stuff. Like, the creative budget for the band, it must be really high. And I respect that, because it just doesn't... Nobody else, I feel like, is putting it all together like they do.
Forever pushing the boundaries.
Yeah. The new music videos I feel like, are less specifically animated, but they're animated in a fun, interesting way that I think really is probably a smarter usage of the animation time.
All right, now it's time for notable B-sides. These were songs that were so close to being on... Well, they might have been another album that we picked, but it wasn't the first... and might not have been the most popular, but anybody got some notable B-sides?
Of course. From Good News for People Who Love Bad News, Ocean Breeze Salty was a strong contender. The Good Times Are Killing Me. And the song that I was definitely not allowed to listen to as a kid, Black Cadillacs. The chorus of which, don't worry, there will be bleeps. The chorus of which is, we were done with all the fucking around. Needless to say, my parents were not amused.
I think the history is a little hazy for me on which album I specifically bought first. I feel like it was Demon Days was definitely one of the first. But I would like to also note on some other albums that were pretty close contenders, because I think also Good News for People Who Love Bad News was also one of the first albums I ever got. Also, Less Than Jake's Anthem was also one of the first albums I had ever bought, which was because of the Digimon soundtrack, which had Less Than Jake, Bare Naked Ladies, Smash Mouth, Fatboy Slim, like a real star-studded cast that soundtrack. And I'm trying to think, and I believe my aunt got me U2's How to Dismantle an Atomic Bomb very early on as well, because I really liked Vertigo.
I got that in my Easter basket.
Yeah, bud.
Because Vertigo was the first song I ever bought on iTunes.
Vertigo, I was really deceived when the rest of that album was not as hype as that song, but that's okay.
But that's okay, because it's good in its own way. City of Blinding Lights gets me every time. I realize I already did mine, but I do want to give a quick shout out to not the first album I ever bought, but an album that I begged my mother to drive me to the store and buy for weeks. Red Hot Chili Peppers' Stadium Arcadium, because
also on that list. Oh my god.
I loved Snow Heyo so much, and when I got my first guitar, I wanted to learn how to play it, and then I realized how hard it was, and I stopped playing guitar.
No, John Frusciante is a beast.
Truly. Man,
I mean, we talked about so many of the albums that I had out the same, right about the same time. I think I remember sharing this album with you guys, but I don't even know if you remember it that much. I was playing this album a year or two ago before I had my new car. When I had a CD, all I had was a CD player. But if you remember Scatter the Ashes.
I do.
I had to catalog order that CD when I was in college, but it came on a Punk-O-Rama CD that I had bought for really cheap at Best Buy, maybe $4, but it was one of those sampler songs. I just loved the hell out of that CD. They probably still have that CD someplace, because I think Eveline came off one of those CDs too, maybe Punk-O-Rama 4 or something, which, I mean, deep listen, if you are a deep fan of the podcast, you probably heard us talk about this before. But I mean, yeah, I'm Not Okay by My Chemical Romance is probably up there. Probably Anything by The Used. I was looking around on things on here, and I know it came later, but Miss Murder is a jam.
December Underground was a huge record for me and my middle school friends. That and Dark Light by Him came out at the same time, and it was our weird middle school goth
album.
phase.
Yeah, I think that's why I still have a propensity to wear tight black jeans all the time. I still feel
it's because you listen to too much AFI and Him.
Yeah, I just there's just, I don't have any problem with wearing tight black jeans. I don't know. It'll probably go away at some point in time, but I just...
They cover up your heartogram tattoo?
Basically. Metal can be about love, okay? I don't know. There's just a lot of melodic stuff that around the time that was really good. I talked about The Killers, but I didn't actually buy it. No, I did. I did buy it. I did buy The Killers. I bought Hot Fuss, and I hated it.
Whoa, I feel that.
I remember this is I've talked about this a few times on a couple different podcasts. I've said okay, so one of my musical regrets is that I bought Hot Fuss, and I none of the rest of it sounded like
somebody told me. Yeah.
Somebody told me. Yeah, so I just got rid of it because I was this is terrible, awful.
You got rid of it?
Yeah, I gave it away.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
I was just here, somebody want this? This is really bad.
I don't remember how I got Hot Fuss, but I remember the day that I bought Sam's Town on the way to one of my brother's baseball games, and I sat in the car at his baseball game and listened to Sam's Town all the way through instead of watching him play baseball.
I think the other one, I don't know if it came around. I never bought the CD, but it was a really good song, was Panic at the Disco, I Write Sins Not Tragedies.
Oh, I had that CD.
Oh, Fall Out Boy. I never bought the CD, but that was a track that was really stuck in my head. We're Going Down. Sugar, We're Going Down. Man, I can just go on and on and on. I don't have that many B-sides, but
I split that album with someone.
Well, this is what the Patreon is for.
So we'll go deep into this one because I have some good questions to talk about this, but
well, Tyler, if people want to appreciate the Digimon soundtrack with you, where can they do that?
They can do that in a Windows 95 interface. You can find my design and illustration work at rudepets.club, and as always, you can find me on socials as rudepetsclub on Instagram, and also, don't forget, Twitter.
Sean, if people want you to burn them a copy of any of these albums we've talked about tonight, where can they reach you?
Well, you can find me on Instagram at TellySean, but you can probably go on Spotify and find yourself a nice legally paid for copy and give some very small amount of royalties to somebody. So I appreciate the plug. Spotify is a better way to go.
And if you want tips on how to use LimeWire, I can provide those to you circa 2005 on Twitter at TC Olmstead. And we're off to record our Patreon bonus show, Billy Joe Armstrong's Middle School Notebook. But until next week, we'll be back on No Repeat.